What's going on, everyone? Graydon here, LPM Podcast, Season 2. We've got Myles in the building. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, I'm just happy to be here. Talk cards, talk art, talk anything you want to talk while I'm here.
Man, I'm so glad that you could join us. Everybody out there knows that I collect Sabretooth, and recently for Marvel Platinum, you were the Sabretooth guy. You did that beautiful painting for one of the base cards. Let's talk about that. Let's get right into it. That was amazing. Was this your first Marvel set you did original paintings for?
Yeah, this was the first set that I did core, base cards for. I've been working with Upper Deck for a while now, about 7 years. I want to say since like 2017, doing sketch cards. And then I finally got in to do some base cards, and it was awesome. It was something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And you mentioned Sabretooth, and that's the one I was happiest about getting because I grew up on X-Men and mutants, and that's my love. So when they showed me the list of what I could pick from, like I scanned and like first mutant I found was Sabretooth. I'm like, yep, that's happening.
Love it. I absolutely love it. So when you said, there's so many things I want to ask you, but when you say that you got a list, can you tell us a character that was on that list that you didn't get to paint that you in the future would love to paint?
Yeah. So basically when I got into this set, it was getting near the late days of commissioning for the set. And so about 80% of it was already commissioned. So the list I got was pretty trimmed down. And, a bunch of B-listers mostly. And there were a few like hot names in there. I thought, okay, well, maybe someone else backed out. And so some of those big names got back in. And I'm like, all right, let me target a couple of those. Because I know I want to do Thor. Like Thor was on the list. I was like, I don't know how Thor's on this list. Someone must have backed out, but I'm taking Thor because that's going to be awesome. Nice. And then I wanted the mutants, so I went after Sabretooth. And if people ask me what I like to paint, it's usually like I like gritty over pretty. So I like the villains. I like stuff that's kind of maybe a little gruesome sometimes, whatever. But something usually kind of gritty. So I thought, okay, let's go ahead and grab Kane because Kane's a villain. I love villains. And then the last decision was, all right, what do I go for here? And I do a lot of stuff in the fantasy world as well. So Ares felt like a nice fit for my style. But the one I passed up that I probably wouldn't have passed up in hindsight was Mr. Fantastic.
Mr. Fantastic.
I thought, well, that's probably not the best fit for me. I take something more fantasy or whatever just to switch it up. But I know how popular Mr. Fantastic is, and that probably would have been a fun one to put my mark on.
I love these names that they come up with. I would have loved to have been in that boardroom when they're like, you know what, I've got a crazy idea for a character. I think we're going to call him Mr. Fantastic.
Right? Yeah.
Kind of funny. So you said that as well. You have previous experience with Upper Deck, and is that through sketch cards?
Yeah. I've done sketch cards for Upper Deck for about 7 years. Way back when I started in 2017, the first set I did was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Cool.
And at that point, I really didn't know what the heck I was doing. I feel like I was just kind of like, all right, everybody's sketching these things in pen and ink, so let me go ahead and do that. And I did Copic marker and pen and ink, and I think that's how you see most sketch cards most commonly. But all of my other work and what I was working towards with my larger pieces was oil paintings. So several years later, in I think 2020, I did my first set of sketch cards fully in oils. And then that's how I've been doing them ever since.
Cool. Now, oil paint is such a medium. It's an artist's medium to work with. There's linseed oils. There's other additives added to it. The paints are made from real pigments. What's your background in art? Like, are you a trained artist? Are you an illustrator? Like, what's your education background?
My education background is not in art at all. I started out my career in software, and I did software for about almost 25 years. The last 10 years of which I was simultaneously trying to learn and build my art career, knowing that I didn't want to end my career in software. That's not where I wanted to stay forever. It was a bit soul sucking, but it had its moments. So, it's ups and downs, of course. But the creativity just wasn't there that I wanted. So as I was kind of studying and learning and, building what I was going to do with my art career, I was just kind of thinking of, okay, where do I want to go with this and what do I want to learn? And oils just hooked me. And I started watching YouTube videos and trying to learn how to oil paint. And that's really what it was. It was mostly self-taught. I took a couple of courses, mentorships with Smart School. So I mentored with Dave Palumbo and Dan DeSantos, and those were tremendous mentorships. I learned a ton from those guys.
I've heard of them before. I don't know where, but I've
Yeah.
heard of those two guys before.
Yeah.
They're probably pretty good. But
yeah, that's a Palumbo piece right there from Marvel Masterpieces. It's one of my favorite pieces in my collection. It hangs in my studio so it can inspire me.
it's so interesting talking to people about their education background, because so many of us right now are the same age who are a part of this hobby, and there is an education to be had on the internet. You no longer need to sit in the classroom. You can have a career and you can study something else of anything of your choosing online. And it's an amazing time to be a creative. It's an amazing time to have that ambition to self-learn something.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Like, I can't even imagine when I was a kid, none of this was available to me, because I'm I'm not a young person. I was born in '76, and so growing up for the first 20 years of my life, this stuff kind of didn't really exist. And if you wanted something, you had to get it from a book. And not to sound like too much of an old guy, it's just kind of crazy to me,
Yeah.
the ability to just go to YouTube or go to the internet and find full courses, full curriculum for anything you want to learn. And then you have to be the type of person that can self-learn, though. Not everybody is that type of person.
Right.
You got to be kind of a little bit crazy to be able to go to work for 40 to 50 hours a week at your day job, and then, come home and spend, another 30 hours of your nights and weekends learning a totally different career for 10 years or whatever it takes to get good enough at that to make it a career. So it's takes a bit of insanity as well.
Absolutely. This is a fun conversation. In my industry, I frequently tell the guys at my job, like, if you follow the career path of your dreams, you'll never work a day in your life, because that field isn't hiring. And you're evidence of the opposite. So maybe I'm going to have to stop telling the guys that work this. But I love that. I love that you're there.
Yeah, thanks. It was a lot of hard work when I look back at the journey, but it's good to see my art out there. And honestly, for me, it's just, I grew up looking at these things. I know, buying cards and buying comics, and and just it was such a great escape. And then I always just wanted to be able to be a part of those worlds. It's just, to be able to contribute to that. So hopefully now, maybe someone's looking at my cards and going like, oh, I want to do this when I grow up.
Right.
Maybe you can inspire someone else. That's what you got to hope for. So
Something that comes up frequently on this podcast when we chat with artists is how, when you're doing the type of work that you're doing, you're not only an artist, you're an entrepreneur. You're doing your own marketing. You're doing your own digital work. You're wearing an awful lot of hats. How was that transition into, because it's not just learning how to paint, it's learning how to do all of it. How has that been for you?
Yeah, that part is difficult. And it's, I think a lot of people don't realize just how much of your time it takes. Because you're right, what you're doing is everything from, marketing, sales, taking orders, packaging shipments. You're the shipping department, you're all of the departments, basically. You're accounting as well. And so, half your time, potentially, or even more, is taken doing these things that aren't sitting at the easel and paintings. I think maybe a lot of people have this kind of mindset that, oh, great, a painter, you just, you go to your studio every day and you just paint, and then that's it. It works. And it's like, no, there's just so much more to it. Luckily, coming from software, in a leadership role in software, I had a lot of business knowledge, just, how to run a business in general, from that. And, we started as a small company in software. And so I learned a lot of things that maybe I wouldn't have learned in, just a normal 9-to-5 job. So I think that some of that business knowledge helped me coming into art. And I even on my YouTube channel, I have a series of videos talking about some of the things I learned in business that have helped me in my art career. I don't update it as much as I should, because I don't have that much time, like we just discussed. but I'm hoping to continue that series and continue to talk about things, because it's everything from communication to, just how you treat your deadlines. I mean, there's so much involved in the business side of art, that it's not just the art. And like, I could go on for a while about this, but one of the other things I'll say, so before I talk your ear off about this, is like, so many people, this is the same when I was in software as it is in art. So many people think it's just about how smart you are or how good of an artist you are. And that's really like maybe half the game. Like, obviously you need to be a good enough artist to be able to, be in whatever thing you want to be in, or a good enough programmer back when I was in software to be able to do the job. But once you get to that level, everything else is how are you as far as like your deadlines and your communication? How are you to work with?
Right.
And there's so much of that. I think people who maybe go right into a field like art and don't have the world experience first before they become a freelance artist maybe struggle with, or at least I think I've noticed with a lot of younger artists struggle with that. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. That there's so much more to it than just painting. Like you said, it's a business.
Yeah. So a couple things I want to touch on there. So first of all, you have a YouTube channel. In the description down below, I'm going to list all of the places that you can find Myles on social media and on YouTube. Please go over there, subscribe to his channel, follow along with these artists. That's the best way to know what's going on. So please, please, please go over there. I'll have all that stuff in the description below. You mentioned a couple of things about like those other skills. That's a great tip. What is something you wish you knew when you started your freelance painting career that you want to pass on to other people who are looking to start?
I think the biggest thing, the best advice I can give is it is an absolute roller coaster of emotions because it's kind of just like anything from social media to trying to get new clients. It's like you put something out there and you hope people like it. And sometimes things you think are amazing don't do very well, and things that you didn't expect can do very well. And the same thing with clients. Now you send, messages out to, Wizards of the Coast or DC Comics or Marvel or Upper Deck or whoever you're trying to send to say, hey, look at me, I'm an artist, give me some work. And there are thousands of other artists doing the same thing. And, it's easy to get discouraged if you don't immediately get a response back that even says, hey, nice artwork, but we don't have room right now. You don't even get that because they're getting so much email. They can't sift through it and respond to everybody. So you're like, well, do I suck now? Am I not good enough? I'm not even good enough for a response. So you kind of go through that role, and then someone responds and you're like, woo. And then and then it's 9 months before, the project starts, or you hear back from them again. So it is a kind of a crazy roller coaster, and it's a kind of a roller coaster financially as well, because, money comes in, but then it doesn't for a little while, and then and you're kind of just working off spot jobs, and you have to be good enough with your finances to be able to manage that. So, I guess that's the biggest piece of advice I could give is kind of be prepared for a bit of a roller coaster, both emotionally and financially and everything.
It's interesting that when people describe a career, especially in art, they consider it a discipline. And discipline is the perfect word for being a freelance artist from what you're describing.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be thinking ahead, really. I mean, just like any small business or entrepreneur or someone who's starting up is, you're running a one-person business. So you got to be thinking ahead about your finances, about where you're spending your time. I mean, I one of the videos on my YouTube channel, I'm obsessed with time. One of the videos on my YouTube channel is just all about how I, track my time and try to think about, am I working on the things that are going to help me 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, and trying to keep focused, because there's so much you could do. Like right now, if I wasn't on this call, I could be making time-lapse videos of some of the paintings I recently recorded. I could be posting to my Patreon. I could be making a YouTube video. I could be actually painting. I could be working on 3 different clients' work I have right now. And there's just so much you could be doing. So you really have to be able to focus and come up with a list and kind of be disciplined about what you're working on. Otherwise, because you don't have a boss coming to you and saying, hey, this week, work on this. You're the boss and the worker and the marketer and the shipper and all those things.
I think that's an interesting thing to bring up is, time, having respect for other people's time shows that you have a respect for your own time. Yeah. And I appreciate you making time to do this video with us today, because we've been speaking to a lot of artists lately that are at a point in their career where they've produced work for Marvel, they're published, and they're at a stage in their career. And I think that there are people watching this that are at the beginning or middle stage of that, and they're really interested in hearing from you guys about what they could be doing in order to get to where you guys are at. So leading into my next question, I would like to know, what would you call your first big break?
Interesting. I would say, honestly, I would say the biggest break was probably doing these cards for Upper Deck, these base set cards. There were a couple other things before that when I hit them, I thought they were the big break.
Yeah.
I did some work for Paizo for their Pathfinder Adventure card game about 5 years ago or so, but it was just kind of a blip. And I was still, working my full-time job and didn't have the time to like pour quite as much into my art at the time. And I was still learning, and I didn't realize how far I was. When you look back, you realize how far you were at the time. And so I thought that was the thing, and getting sketch cards from Upper Deck. I'm like, oh, cool, that's the thing. But then I did sketch cards for so long, and I was like, where's this going? I'm trying to get to the base set cards. I'm trying to get to work for Wizards of the Coast or Marvel or DC. And it what in hindsight, it probably wasn't the break, because I did it for so long before I got the base, but you don't really know. These things kind of snowball and it starts very slow. But
Yeah.
for me, the biggest thing that I could point to that was like, okay, the largest customer or the largest spectacle I think that I've done so far is probably those base cards. And I think I've had a very good response from those. So
You have had a really good response from them in that, like, I loved the Sabretooth that you did. It's a beautiful painting. It translated really well onto card. It's nice getting a full figure Sabretooth character. Have you been surprised by how enthusiastic Marvel fans are about these cards? Has it been like were you like, oh, you knew that all along, or are you a bit surprised?
I don't know if I was surprised about the enthusiasm, because honestly, as someone who collected and collects things, I get it.
Yeah.
Completely get it.
Yeah.
I have boxes of comics over in the other room would tell you that. So I absolutely understand it. And I used to go to conventions and wait in 2-hour lines to get autographs from guys like Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and stuff back in the day. So I absolutely get it. But I didn't realize how tight knit the community was, which is really cool because everybody knows everybody. One of the things that was really cool at OAX, which is a convention that the first one was last January, the next one's coming this January, and it's very focused on original art and now card art as well. But I was just sitting next to a random collector, and there's an auction going on. And as different people were lifting up their hands to auction, he'd be like, oh, that guy is so-and-so. He collects this and he has blah, blah, blah. And like every one of those people, like they all knew each other from the collecting world. They know what characters they collect, which is really interesting. And just what they have in their collections. And I just thought that was super cool.
It's amazing that so many of us within this hobby associate one another with their character that they collect.
Yeah.
And then there are other ways to collect. There are people who collect sets. There are people who collect insert sets. There are people who collect characters. There's a variety of different ways, but it is a very well-known fact that we think, oh, that's so-and-so. He collects Hulk, or he collects Beast, or whatnot, and what have you. Is there a character that you collect?
Magneto is my favorite character of all time. I've got the Magneto helmet up there, if I can point to the right spot.
There you go.
And I was lucky enough that I got a commission recently to do a 12x16 Magneto piece. So you guys will be seeing that on my Insta pretty soon. And that was a blast because that's my favorite character of all time. And Wolverine's probably my second favorite, and just in general, the mutants and stuff. I love the mutants. So.
if you had your choice and you got to pick a character that was your favorite, like a Wolverine or a Magneto, is that exciting or is that nerve-wracking to paint it?
Yeah, it's a little of both. It's super exciting because you're like, yes, I get to paint my favorite character. But then you go, I want to do justice to this. This has got to be just right. And so, you start doubting yourself and iterating over and, more than you might normally iterate. And, it's, oh, well, but, it's good, but maybe it can be better. Right. And you start second guessing yourself a little bit.
Absolutely.
But overall, it's fun.
Very nice. Are you working from models? What's your process? What do you like to use as reference material?
Reference material, I use a combination of multiple things. I'll use photographic reference of actual people, myself a lot of times, if there's no one else I can get who fits the bill. I'll use figures. In fact, that has started a collecting obsession for me because when I was a kid, I used to collect like figures, like GI Joe figures and He-Man figures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And obviously, as an adult, I kind of went away from that, and I just had them kind of packed away and blah blah blah. And then, as I started looking for more reference materials for my art, I discovered 6 scale figures on Hot Toys and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I can get these, and they'll be great for reference, and they're awesome. But also, they are an addictive hobby to collect because then you want to collect more and more. So I started collecting those as well, and I use them both for my reference and also because I like collecting them. But you can probably see behind me even some of the figures I have just sitting there that are just kind of more of the blank kind of figures, gray or whatever colored. And then you can just kind of pose them up and add accessories to them. And it just helps you find like those things that you can't figure out from your mind. A shadow just kind of falls a certain way, and you think you know how that looks, but you don't. And when you're painting in oils, there's a realism that you need to achieve if you're looking for that sort of realistic, fantasy realistic style, and you need reference from that. So sorry, I mentioned 2 of them. It was photographic reference of actual humans, figures, and the third piece is 3D. Sometimes I'll bring in a 3D model like DAZ 3D or something like that, just to kind of play around and get the general, how the figure is going to be standing in space or something like that. But that only takes you so far because hands and faces need to be real reference. So even if I use any 3D reference to kind of get an idea of how the light would fall on a certain pose, I'm still supplementing that with real hands, feet, and face, actually, reference, because those are things that 3D just can't pull off for you.
Now that you're painting, I'm going to call it professionally. I don't know that. I don't like that word of saying that just because you're now, but that's your profession now.
Yeah, it is.
Do you still find time to get to do art for yourself? Is there like a creative process or an item that you enjoy doing that's just for you, that isn't for sale?
Yeah. So art for myself, not so much as far as like painting, oil painting, but the art that I do for myself is miniature painting, actually.
Cool.
Yeah, because my wife and I play like tabletop games, Marvel United or D&D or Gloomhaven, stuff like that. And before I even started doing this as a career, I used to play Warhammer 40K, War Machine, and stuff like that. So I always liked painting miniatures, and that's something I still do, kind of in my spare time. That's the painting thing I get to do for myself.
I love it. I think that's really important to have something to do creative that is just for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, otherwise it could feel too much like a job, right?
Right. So something that, since we have artists on this channel, what's the process or situation with people wanting to get commissions from you? In a perfect world, how would you like people to go about contacting you and reaching out about commissions?
Yeah, commissions. People usually reach out to me in any of the socials, Instagram, Facebook, my email, my Patreon is another way. Like my AP cards and stuff that I have. I usually, if I have new stuff coming out, I'll make that available to my Patreon subscribers first. And then if they don't bite, then they'll put it out to the public and be like, hey, anybody else? But I want to make sure that they get first dibs since they are paid subscribers to my Patreon. Right now, my commission list, I'm booked out through August right now. Yeah. So I've kind of temporarily put it on a little bit of a hold, but still people contact me through Instagram, Facebook, or email.
Right on. What's coming up next for you? What's something that you want the public to know you're working on right now? What do you got?
Oh man, I wish I could talk about some of the things that I'm working on right now. That's the sad part. I do have some more sketch cards coming out with Upper Deck. I can't really say what sets they're in, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We don't want you to have to do that.
Yeah, but there's some oversized ones, which are pretty cool, which is something I enjoy. And then I'm currently working with a very popular trading card game, which I'm not allowed to talk about. So maybe some people can imagine what that is. And I'm also working with a comic book company and doing some covers. So that's been a lot of fun as well.
So are these covers that you're working on, are they sketch covers or are they going to be printed?
No, printed covers. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, they'll be published covers. I don't know how long it'll be before we see those. And typically with projects, like for instance, like for the Marvel Platinum stuff, it was almost 2 years, from the time I painted them to the time they were released. So for some of the stuff that I'm talking about, probably a year from now, I would expect to see it on the shelf somewhere.
Right. Have you collected Marvel Platinum yourself? Do you have a binder going, or what's your situation?
I bought a box just because I wanted to open, and I did an opening on my YouTube just to be like, okay, I'm going to open and see if I can pull one of my cards. And the very first pack, I pulled my Sabretooth piece, which was great. Made me super happy to, like, I don't know. It's just one of those things. You're a kid and you're opening packs all the time. And now I'm an adult and I've done the card. Now I pull my own card out of a set. It was just like
Surreal.
my mind exploded. So I bought that one box, and then now I've just been buying some singles here and there. I want to get like one of each, of my cards. Not all the variants right now. Just the basic ones.
Yeah, that's right.
Just to have them.
That's can we talk a little bit about original art and now how there's such a market for original art that artists can sell their paintings? You want to discuss a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's great because, quite honestly, you don't get paid a ton for the original piece, when you do it for the companies. And possibly part of that is because they know that you have that secondary income of being able to sell the original art later. But it's great, man. Unfortunately, you have to wait a couple of years to do it. But I love it. I've had people ask me, like, how do you feel about selling it? You spend so much time doing that, and then you sell your pieces. Do you keep any of them or whatever? And I just always think, no, I'd rather have someone else enjoy this. Like, it can sit in my studio like forever, and I look at it, and it's like, okay, great. But I would so much more rather have someone else out there seeing it, enjoying it, maybe showing it to their friends, and letting it be who it wants to be out there. Your artwork, each painting is like your kid. Like, you spend all this time on it, and it's like, okay, now go be who you're gonna be. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Something I've noticed, like you were saying about the tight-knit Marvel community, is paintings, for the most part, go to very good homes. They get very well loved.
Yeah, and I've noticed that, like most of the people that I've talked to, when I've had a chance to interact with them who bought the paintings, they just want to talk about the fandom, talk about their collection, and they're so honest and just sincere, and they just want someone else to nerd out with, and I love it. It's freaking awesome, to be able to sell it to someone who's so excited to get it as well,
It's an amazing time that we're living in, where we can get to participate with these items that we love, that we've collected from when we were children, but also get to interact with the artists that are making it. Yes. We love asking you guys things that kind of give, like, for years, people wondered if you guys even got a character list, like how the selection for characters worked. Like, did you just get to pick whoever you want? There's always these questions that come up. So as we clarify more and more of the process about how these cards are made, it eliminates a lot of these kind of gray areas of people who are collecting and wondering, why wasn't my character in here? Is my character banned or whatever? It's a great time to get to know all of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is weird, trying to figure out which characters are banned and which characters are, and it changes set to set. So, yeah, that's an interesting one. I didn't know how it worked either, and when I finally got in touch with, the person at Upper Deck who handled the base cards, the art director who did the base cards, as opposed to the sketch card art director, I had no idea how it was supposed to work. So I was just like, let me know how this goes. What do you want from me? And she said, well, okay, I'm going to send you this list of characters, and, you choose, 4 of them that you want to work on.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this list. It was crazy. I was like a kid in a candy shop when the list arrived, kind of looking through and deciding, what do I want to work on? But I didn't know it worked that way either. I don't know if it always works that way, so it could be different for different sets as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Have people ever reached out to you once they've pulled one of your sketch cards? Have you ever had that kind of go full circle where they're like, oh, look what I got?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen that happen quite a bit. On Instagram, people will tag me and or on Facebook and say, hey, I pulled one of your cards or whatever. And that's always really cool. And then I get to see the rest of their Instagram and see all the rest of their collection, which is always cool. I always do that just because, you're curious, like, does this person collect this character? Are they super happy they pulled it? Usually if they post it, they're happy about it. Otherwise, you just see it on eBay and then you'll hear about it. But yeah, it's really cool. And then, sometimes you just have a conversation with them. They'll just be like, hey, I really like your work. And then, I think a lot of times people are surprised that you respond back. and it's just like, I'm just a normal dude sitting here in my studio. It's like, yeah, I'm going to respond back. I'm not like some superstar or something. Like, I think it's awesome. Let's talk about it.
I think it's great that so many of us are collecting and finding out that the artists that are working on what we collect are also collectors and fans.
Yeah.
It becomes really evident when you do reach out to somebody like, hey, I pulled one of your sketch cards. It's really exciting to be able to have that experience go full circle, pulling a piece of artwork from a product you like and then being able to share that with the artist that did it. That's a niche hobby.
Yeah, it is. It's really unique. And, it's thanks to our ability to do kind of what we're doing today, right? Because we can just communicate with anybody anywhere, pretty much anytime, as long as they haven't blocked us yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, you won't do an AP for me? You're blocked.
Right. But yeah, no, it's really cool to be able to do that. And also to hear from, you sit there for hours and work on sketch cards, days, weeks, however how many sketch cards you have, and you just send them off and you go, okay, I guess these will appear in packs somewhere,
Right.
I don't know. But now, because of how things are, and people posting stuff and talking to you and reaching out, you actually get to see this card that came from Upper Deck warehouse to your studio. You spent hours on it. You packaged it back up, sent it back to Upper Deck. They put it in packages. Who the heck knows where it went to? All over the world. And that person opens it up somewhere on the other side of the world and says, like, hey, I found this card that you did in this pack. Holy crap, that's super cool.
Do you ever do a sketch card and you're like, oh, this is a really good one, and then really hope that it gets pulled and it comes back to you?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Because I just want to see, like, oh, does someone else think this one is as cool as I think it is? Or am I just losing my mind here?
Has one ever not got pulled? Have you ever been like, man, I wonder what happened to that one?
I don't know. I assume that there are some that haven't gotten pulled that, that I don't know about or whatever. I haven't tried to track down all of them and see, hey, where have all my sketch cards gone or anything like that. But I have to imagine there's still some out there in packs from who knows when.
It's so
haven't been
exciting.
opened yet, right?
So I've never pulled a sketch out of a pack before. I have lots of sketches and I love them, but I've never opened up a product and pulled a sketch. And that's an exciting moment, especially when it's an artist that you really want.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so random because you pull something and you have no idea if it's going to be your character or not. But that's what's so cool about the community, because you can just hop on the community and be like, hey, I pulled this, sketch card of Sabretooth. Who likes Sabretooth? And that's you. You're like, I like Sabretooth.
Call me, please.
Yeah. And then you could trade them, for a Gambit or something like that, or whatever.
I love that character collectors are reaching out to you and getting you to do commissions for their collections. There's such an emphasis put on published and pack pulled artwork.
Yeah.
There's also a fantastic market for secondary stuff, for getting commissions from artists that you enjoy. I think that having artwork from artists who are published within the Upper Deck Marvel world is just as important. Having artwork from those artists is fantastic.
Yeah, I think that it's super cool, and I love when people aren't just looking for published artwork, because there's something more personal you can do with that when it's a commission. And, you're also not constrained by the rules of, Marvel or Upper Deck or whatever. And, like for certain cards, like for AP cards and stuff, I have to look back for the rules when they say, hey, I want you to do, this character for this set. So I have to look back at the rules for that set and be like, was that character allowed in that set? I can't do Punisher. I can't do Cable. I can't do, Deadpool for most sets.
Yeah.
Nightcrawler. There's so many characters that you can't, Fantastic Four, that you can't work on the sketch card sets. So, when someone says, hey, will you do as a personal sketch card or even a small painting or whatever? Like, okay, great. We have so much more freedom now than we did on this official stock, or even for like a published piece. Like, let's say you want a Wolverine piece or even a Sabretooth piece. Now, I can do some things on a commission that I absolutely cannot do, for Upper Deck. You can't have guns pointed at the viewer. You can't have blood. You can't have any of that kind of stuff. So
no fun. Absolutely no fun.
No fun's allowed.
No fun at all. As we get to the end here and we wrap this up, one question that I want to finish on here is, with the list of banned characters, who is the one character on the banned list that you really wish that you could do?
Punisher. Punisher is one of my favorite characters growing up, and I would love to do a Punisher piece.
Yeah,
just something moody and brooding.
Absolutely. Myles, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today and to talk to us about the artwork that you're doing, artwork in general, and collecting as a whole.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime. Thank you for having me.
I'll, like I said, I'm going to leave everything down below in the description of where you can find Myles. Got to go over there and check this stuff out. Please like and subscribe to this stuff, and we'll see you guys on the next one.